just talking about emotions. There are, of course, the lower emotions and the higher emotions. And we'll talk more about the higher emotions as we go along here. But the lower emotions, you know, the wanting and lust and desires of, you know, there's good desire for awakening, desire to help others. But there is also kind of self-satisfying desires. And those are actually considered part of the lower emotions. And then there is all the aversions of what we dislike and or resistance we have to things. And then kind of the more insidious ones, like, wow, the jealousy, what an incredibly powerful emotion. And just a kind of, I'll call it cultural anxiety, you know, that is predominant and creates an incredible amount of negativity. And then, you know, then the base of all this is fear, you know, that exists. You know, these are just the truths of them. And the practice here, you know, as far as the sitting practice, it's always, I'm not giving a talk on this at all, of the shadow pieces of these practices, you know, but just to kind of name them in some way that, you know, there's, you know, unhealthy kind of desire and lust for all sorts of things that come into the mind. And, you know, we possess or obsess on them in some way. And, you know, to recognize that we do that. And it's good. If you find yourself kind of caught in, you know, this, one of the wonders is that there's two things to look at. One is that whatever it is, it's impermanent. It will arise and be there for and pass away. It's always done it. You know, it has never stayed. And the second one is, if you want to know, you know, I like kind of Don Juan's thing. If, you know, if you really want to know about something you really have great kind of lust or desire for, how important it is, just ask your death, you know. I love that, the whole thing of just, you know, having death over your left shoulder. And if you want to know something about what's true or how important it really is, just ask your death, you know. So there's that side of things, you know. And this is kind of, it can be very powerful force. And sometimes, you know, I find that when you know, nothing's happening and you get bored, then you jump on the, you know, lust or, you know, fantasize about some trip to, you know, the moon or something. And, you know, just out of boredom, you just kind of jump on these things, and then they kind of pull you away, and you're not here, you know. So in that way, they are, you know, kind of distract you from this whole process of awakening. The other side of this is when there is contraction and reaction, sometimes due to, you know, something from the past that either harmed us or caused us fear or loss. And we contract around that, and there is a sense of aversion or anger that produces that contraction, which then we can run a story about, oh, they did this, they did that, whatever happened. And again, it's a negation, you know, And can you actually just recognize, where you feel it in your body and what that actual feeling or emotion is incredibly important in these practices, so you don't possess or obsess them, And in doing that, when it becomes, you can just be mindful, and they will actually dissipate on their own on some level. But if they become really strong, like lust or desire, then it's really good to just practice a little metta, because there's this contraction around it, and it may be unresolvable in the here and now. And so to simply remember that, there is this natural sense of loving kindness which dissipates any kind of anger or negativity that we possess or obsess on, So that's kind of, and they're kind of the two opposite sides to a double coin. There's another double coin, which is one is known. I like the language of sloth and torpor. It's, I don't know why, it's just kind of like sloth and torpor. I'm so well versed in this one. And it used to be. I was just. I was sleep deprived. There were a lot of things I didn't know, and I came out of this kind of Burmese, thing about all you need is 4 hours sleep a night, and then you wonder why you're, half crashed all day, and think you're just kind of some, But I find when I finally figured it out. Oh, by the way, it took me years, to figure this one out, that I couldn't actually exist on 4 hours. I couldn't, And, we live in very busy lives. Again, that cultural anxiety I'm talking about. We really need, I'd be thrilled to get 8 hours, but, it's really the kind of the competent thing of keeping biological balance in the body, And so when we come to this, and people get their 8 hours sleep, they're fine, and they come in and, and so this first of all, I have to just apologize because I do understand this culture. And unfortunately, sometimes people come in and they've been running on empty for, and sometimes not really aware of it. And they come and they really want to, they all gung-ho on doing a meditation course, and they just, they just out. But in another way, this is kind of like I think of this as a healing poultice. It just like pulls out sometimes that's actually needed to heal, to be whole, And so sometimes that's just sleep, But when you get enough sleep and you get rested and everything, what this real sloth and torpor is about that. And that is when kind of, it's like in a theater, you only have 2 lights on, so you can't really see everything going on, And the idea, you're just kind of out of it, And there, they talk about in this practice is, go out and walk fast. Like just get some, get physical energy moving in your body. You also, I'll talk a little more about it tonight, and I still appreciate the Buddha's in the suttas where he talked about pinching the ear. I think that's just the earlobe, which in kind of Chinese acupuncture is there are all these meridian points there and all that. But sometimes just keeping your eyes open, can be really helpful since you close your eyes to go to sleep. And taking a few deep breaths. And it's interesting, one of the pieces I came came out of the Tibetan teachings about imagining light, you know? And the way it was described was talked about taking refuge in the Buddha. And so actually, in a sense, kind of when you're really kind of taking refuge in something that's, you know, bigger and wider than you, in that kind of, I can say, Buddha field. And it's just bringing that energy and light in through association. So that's kind of sloth and torpor. Sloth, it has trouble reproducing, I understand. It's just, But the next one has to do with restlessness, and there are two aspects of this. One is restlessness, which they say karmically comes from the past. And sometimes, you know, it can be so frustrating, so painful, where you just can't sit still. It's just like ants crawling all over you, you know? And you just are, and it drives you bonkers, you know? It's, again, all these things kind of come and go, but, and they say that don't move. That's the antidote. Oy, oy, oy. But, you know, but it too, another way is to see that its nature is, it's impermanent. It will arise and pass away. It's just in the middle of it, it's a little bit disconcerting and uncomfortable, you know. It's where counting the breaths sometimes really helps. You know, just, and it's a little bit of avoidance technique, but, you know, we use it. And then there's worry. And worry is that, you know, classically is the 3 o'clock in the morning waking up. And so things are just a little foggy. And, aha, you jump on something that you don't know. You know, it's kind of like part of the unknown future. And it's all about future. And then we attempt to solve it, you know. And we then, you know, go from nice, kind of restful, kind of waking up to awake and incredibly frustrated, you know. And it's just, you know, worry is just a string of words in the mind about the future. You know, it's essentially, that's all it is. It's just a string of words in the mind about the future. And, you know, you'll sit there and play it over and over in as many directions as you can, which is nothing about the string of words. It's about a feeling, you know. And that feeling of anxiousness because you can't solve it, or it doesn't seem solvable, or it's for sure going to turn out terrible, you know. So it's really getting first that it is just kind of a little broken record. I guess that dates me, but anyway, just kind of spinning on its own, and that you're kind of missing the point, which is the actual feeling, you know. And usually it's some sense of anxiety or fear that, again, you can go to the body and somewhat release it, you know, because to see it for what it is, you know, it's just like this. And then the last one is doubt, and there's two pieces of doubt here. One doubt is about yourself, and that's really the one that they call a hindrance. And that is, I can't do this, you know, it's too hard, you know, I see everybody else is doing, everybody's so quiet, nobody moves, and but me, I'm just all over the place, you know, and that's self-doubt, you know. And I can say, you know, it is probably, of all the kind of hindrances, is the most debilitating, because it means you stay on the surface of the material. You never can drop underneath it, you know. And in a way, it's kind of keeps you on the surface. and doesn't allow you to actually drop down and see directly. Is it true? So that's the kind of, we'll call this the little doubt. And then there's the big doubt with the big D. And I actually think that one, that's not a hindrance. And it's very predominant in kind of the Western Dharma. And it is people who question the nature of themselves, the nature of reality, the nature of the sky, the lake. In a sense, it's, and I'll talk about a little bit more about this tonight. And we're very, as a culture, very good at this. And particularly people who leave their own kind of churches and religions and come here, You're the big deers, which is a quality of investigation and inquisitiveness, which is I think, very supportive in many ways, But it also has its shadow side. So I'm going to talk about that tonight.